Welcome back to the channel. This will be the best wildcard team for Gameweek 35, and we just got the announcement that there'll be no more double or blank Gameweeks this season, so all the fixtures in Gameweek 37 will remain in that specific game week, and that was confirmed by the Premier League at 3 PM UK time. I'll be building the best 15-man squad, so delving into the pool of players you should consider and honing in on the teams you should pile up on with double or triple ups, some maybe defensively, and other aspects you might want to go for two attackers with a midfielder and forward or something along those lines. And we can continue this conversation in the Discord server, the comment section of this video, and across all my social media platforms. They can be found in the description below, and be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single upload or live stream, both FPL and UCL Fantasy. The Champions League will return next week, so that means more content is headed your way with the best team, my own team selection, and another deadline stream next Tuesday. The same goes for Friday in FPL because tomorrow there is a deadline, so be sure not to miss it for Gameweek 35, and everything you need to know for both fantasy formats will be covered on this channel. We're also approaching 33,000 subscribers. Thank you very much to all the people who support every single video by tuning in, commenting, subscribing, and all the members and patrons. You're massively appreciated. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. My squad value is approximately 104.7 million, but in terms of spending power, which you can see for yourself in terms of using FPL.team and seeing what you have available to spend, it is approximately 102.5 million. So it will vary for everybody watching, and you could have a lot of value tied up in certain players, which makes it even easier to afford this wildcard squad. But I'll start off with the two goalkeepers, and I do admit I may have gone a bit too expensive in this position. You ultimately don't need two goalkeepers who cost more than 5 million, but at this stage of the competition, and also with the options in other positions and budget in mind, I still think it's possible to have two premiums or also expensive goalkeepers simultaneously. The best goalkeepers in the game include Sells, Pickford and Raya, the three highest scoring goalkeepers in Fantasy Premier League this season, and I think going for two of them is definitely viable. You don't need to do it, but I think in terms of having those good Nottingham Forest fixtures for the next 3 game weeks and then having an even better fixture from either Pickford or Raya for Game Week 38 looks very viable. But to be fair with Pickford, that wouldn't be the case against Newcastle away, but he would do fairly well against Southampton at home in Game Week 37 when Sells faces West Ham away. But ultimately, I think the best kind of combination of goalkeepers, if you don't mind spending a lot of money in this position, would be Sells and David Raya to have that one Arsenal defensive coverage, because I'm not going for any of their defenders. If you want to go cheap there, Kivior offers decent value, and Saliba and Timber are also good options, but I think one is enough for the Arsenal defence. They have some tough games coming up, like Bournemouth at home, Liverpool away, and Newcastle at home. But in Game Week 38, it is Southampton away, where the Gunners will have a great chance of keeping a clean sheet, and that's where Raya can come in when Sells faces Chelsea at home. If I had to pick only one of these goalkeepers, it would undoubtedly be Sells, who has better fixtures, and I think Nottingham Forest will keep more clean sheets in the remaining 4 game weeks. But you may have a different opinion and want to go for a different goalkeeper entirely. I am covering Everton defensively with Jake O'Brien, one of their cheaper options who has become a regular starter under David Moyes. He didn't really get a look in under Sean Dyche, but you may have been wondering about Jordan Pickford in goal, and you can go for him, but I just would rather have a Game Week 38 goalkeeper with a great fixture like David Raya against Southampton away in terms of rotating with Sells, because in Game Week 37, I still don't mind playing Sells against West Ham away. And if you look at Pickford against Southampton at home, of course, that looks very viable. And I definitely wouldn't recommend Raya against Newcastle at home in that specific game week. But you can definitely go a bit different in certain picks, and you may disagree about going for Raya over Pickford. But Jake O'Brien does come in regardless, and a double up in the Toffees defence is certainly viable, especially over the next 3 game weeks with those 2 home fixtures in mind. But they are benchable in Game Week 36 and 38, in my opinion. Next up is Gvardiol, and over the next 2 game weeks in particular, against Wolves at home and Southampton away, those look very promising for a clean sheet, especially in Game Week 36 against the worst team in the Premier League. And Gvardiol has attacking threat, even in Game Week 38 against Fulham away. He has scored in that stadium before. And of course, I'm referring to last season when Gvardiol went on a mad one towards the end of the season, getting so many FPL points with clean sheets, bonus points, and also goals and assists. And I think he can do something similar to wrap up this Premier League season. And he scored a crucial goal in the FA Cup semi-final against Nottingham Forest. So I think he can definitely come in clutch there for Manchester City and help them secure that top 5 spot for the Champions League next season, and he's by far the best Man City defender overall. I'd certainly prefer him over Ruben Dias and the other options at your disposal. I'm also going to go a little bit different here with Milos Kerkez, and that's mainly looking at Gameweek 38. He is benchable in the next 3 Gameweeks specifically, where he faces Arsenal away, Aston Villa at home, and Man City away. But then it's Leicester at home in Gameweek 38, which could be a guaranteed clean sheet for the Cherries. And Kerkez has that attacking threat from open play. And whenever Bournemouth keep a clean sheet, he has a great chance of getting bonus points. But let's go to the other 2 defenders now. And you may be surprised about some of these picks, but I also want to go for some informed players with a high ceiling, and Kieran Trippier is one of them. One of my slight regrets on the Gameweek 34 free hit was not keeping him in my setup, because he got 15 points overall with 2 assists, a clean sheet, and several bonus points as well. And I think he's worth the extra million now over Livramento and Burn. That wasn't the case last month, but in recent weeks he has certainly turned things around, and this is more like the Trippier we're used to seeing. He might not attain or reach these levels next season, and at least not be a consistent starter and be able to produce on a regular basis, but we do know the ceiling he has with the assist threat from set pieces and open play. So I do think Trippier is a nice player to have in Fantasy Premier League for the last couple of game weeks of the season. And the final defender would form a defensive double up here with Milenkovic and Nottingham Forest. My advice is to go for 2 or 3 Nottingham Forest players overall. You have Elanga in the midfield, Gibbs White is decent, and Chris Wood up front, but my preference is to go for Sells and one of their defenders, and Milenkovic is my favourite. He can score from set pieces, and he has such a presence in those aerial situations. And this defensive line is very balanced overall. You've got some great fixtures over the next 3 game weeks, and in the case of Kerkez, who doesn't have great fixtures in that time frame, he wraps up this season in Gameweek 38 with Leicester at home. Bryan Mbeumo is a template pick for a reason. He's fixture-proof, on penalties, solid stats across the board, and they're very sustainable numbers in terms of creativity and goal scoring. He is my favourite Brentford asset by some distance, but Visser is more of a differential in the grand scheme of things, and going for both of them simultaneously isn't a bad idea whatsoever. But you've also got other forwards that I'll talk about very soon. And you may be wondering, I want more differentials and I want to separate myself from my mini league rivals or trying to claw into a specific rank. I get that, but there are some differentials in this setup, which includes Jake O'Brien with 0.6% ownership. And in terms of the EO, the effective ownership of having Sells and Milenkovic simultaneously, that would also be a differential overall. And Kieran Trippier will be overlooked by many people. I think he was more of a flash in the pan and a flavour of the week for Gameweek 34 on the free hit, but you can keep him for the last 4 game weeks of the season. And despite the fixtures not being great for Newcastle, Trippier is still capable of getting assists and some returns in every single one of those matches. But Mbeumo is one of my favourite midfielders now, and if you want to go a little bit different, I know Shada might offer a high ceiling in specific game weeks, but I think he pales in comparison to Mbeumo, especially when you look at the consistency of the Cameroonian. I'm also going to go for Mohamed Salah. It is boring, I know, another template pick, but that's where I'm going for the explosive Kevin De Bruyne, who has started the last 4 Premier League games, and he was rested in the FA Cup semi-final. So I think having Salah and De Bruyne at the same time looks very enticing on paper, and it's a bit of a flash to the past from a few years ago. And I do think De Bruyne will start most of the games coming up in the Premier League. Of course, these will be his final Premier League games for Man City, and he is linked to the likes of Aston Villa, so we could see him stay in FPL next season. But I think De Bruyne is worth a punt in that midfield, and I would prefer him over Saka and Cole Palmer, especially for the next 3 game weeks in particular. You may then want to go from De Bruyne to Saka when Arsenal face Southampton away for the final game week of the season, but I think for the next 3, you'd rather go for the Belgian legend, you could say, in the Premier League era. I'm also going to go for something a little bit different, you could say, in Jarrod Bowen. I know he's not going to have the lowest ownership of any player I'm discussing today, but I still think having him and Mbeumo is something not many FPL managers will achieve in Gameweek 35. And in my case, if I want to make that happen, it would require a -4 hit. So by having both of them on the wild card, you do make it very feasible to have 2 of the best midfielders in the game with good fixtures overall, especially in the case of Brentford. And I think both players can actually do very well this week alone. And we also look at future game weeks where I think the ceiling is very high, particularly with Mbeumo. I think Bowen can be slightly underwhelming at times, but that's because West Ham are so inconsistent. I do think Bowen has done fairly well considering the Hammer struggles all year round, and I think Bowen is the only West Ham player you should consider, especially in those attacking positions. Ariel as a backup is fine, but with Wan-Bissaka at the back, Fulkrug up front, Kudus, I just think Bowen is the only one you should be going for. And to complete this midfield, I am going for a budget option in Morgan Rogers, but you may also want to go for Jacob Murphy or another option like Elanga instead. But I'm going to go for something a little bit different up front instead of Matheus Cunha, who is still worth checking out, by the way. With Wolves not doubling in 36, I just don't think the appeal is as big as it would have been if Wolves had that double, and then you'd sell Cunha in 37, but that doesn't matter now because that isn't going to be the case anyway. So I'm going for Rodgers here in the midfield, and he has done well against some of his upcoming opponents, like Fulham, where he scored at Craven Cottage, and that's his next opponent actually in Gameweek 35. Not to mention Tottenham at home in Gameweek 37. He scored against them despite the fact that Aston Villa were battered on that particular occasion. So this midfield looks very strong. It is fairly template, I get that. I think on the wild card, most people will gravitate towards these five, and that's where the likes of Elanga could come in for you. You might even want to go for Saka still and back him to get 70 plus minutes against Bournemouth. So I don't think he should be ruled out entirely. And you've also got Jacob Murphy, who isn't a differential. His ownership is 18%, but I think he offers great value, and I think he's one of the best options in the game at that price and below. So there are different ways to go about it, but Justin Kluivert, you may want to go for him as well. The fixtures aren't necessarily great, but Gameweek 38 against Leicester at home looks very promising to say the least, and that's where I'd highly recommend the likes of Justin Kluivert or even Semenyo, who has been in brilliant form recently for the Cherries. But overall, I think De Bruyne would be the biggest differential and explosive pick in this position. And now let's go on to the forwards. It has been a while, but I've gone for the Brentford attacking double-up of Wissa and Mbeumo, partners in crime. They are one of the best duos in the Premier League, and I think both of them can combine on several occasions for the remaining game weeks of this season. And his ownership is around 14%, so he's not a massive differential, but you've also got De Bruyne and Bowen, who have less than 10% ownership at the time of this recording. They'll probably soar up over the coming days, and I do recognise that, but I think you've got some decent EO combinations here, like Wissa and Mbeumo. Not many FPL managers will have both of them at the same time. You could go for Matheus Cunha, I'm not ruling him out, and Alexander Isak remains a brilliant option up front, but I'm going to go for Marmoush because Man City have the best fixtures over the next two game weeks. Then he's sellable in Gameweek 37 on paper, but I think Marmoush is probably a season-long hold right now with no blank Gameweek there for Man City. Of course, their priority will be the FA Cup final, so maybe they'll rotate certain players and rest and yada yada yada, but you can say that about Crystal Palace as well, and their options are still worth mentioning. Mateta up front, Eze in the midfield, Ismail Assar and Daniel Munoz at the back, but I wouldn't go for 2 or 3 Palace assets. I think one is probably enough, and I think a triple up is certainly out of the cards for me, but everyone can play the game differently and see how things go for them. I've currently got 3 Eagles players, and I'm looking at rectifying that in future weeks. But Marmoush is a great captaincy option in Gameweek 35, and I'd have to say, for Gameweek 36, he might be the standout against Southampton away. But to complete this team, I'm going for Chris Wood, who has been so reliable for me this season, and I think it's very difficult to fit 3 forwards in here, and it has been ages since Isak hasn't featured in one of these wildcard videos, and you might be thinking that is a massive mistake, and I get that. I think it's a great captaincy option against Brighton in Gameweek 35, but his form hasn't been particularly great, and Eddie Howe recently said in the press conference that Isak isn't as absolute best right now, and I think that's fair to say given his recent form. The fixtures aren't great in general, and I don't think you need 2 or 3 Newcastle players, but it's still an option for you with Murphy and Barnes in the midfield. Anthony Gordon is an outside shout there, and Isak is always one of the best forwards in Fantasy Premier League. Not to mention Matheus Cunha, Mateta, those 3 should still be considered, and you can go for them if you wish. And I think these 3 are my favourite right now. That could change on a weekly basis. Last week I would have recommended Cunha because of that Leicester fixture, and now I'm gravitating towards Chris Wood, and this video is recorded before Nottingham Forest have played Brentford in the final game of Blank Gameweek 34. Let's now head over to FPL.team, the website, to visualise future game weeks with a lineup, captaincy, and much more. Just to reiterate, we have no double Gameweek 36 and there is no blank in 37 as a result. All the fixtures will remain as they are, so that pretty much means we have kind of concluded in terms of blanks and doubles for the season, with 34 being the last of a special bunch, you could say. Matt Sells is in goal facing Crystal Palace away. Jake O'Brien, Gvardiol and Trippier would be my starting defenders for Gameweek 35, and Trippier is the only one that's a slight question mark because he is facing Brighton away from home, and that isn't a great fixture for a defender, but his high ceiling does compensate for that slightly. You might even want to double up with Milenkovic and Sells there against Crystal Palace away. We've also got De Bruyne, Mbeumo, Bowen and Salah forming part of a very solid, secure and formidable midfield, and the forward line includes Marmoush, Visser and Chris Wood, and you've got that double up of Brentford against Man United, and Visser and Mbeumo are great options in their respective positions. Raya is at home to Bournemouth, and I'd definitely keep him on the bench compared to Sells. Rodgers is facing Fulham, and that could mean some bench points there, to be honest. Milenkovic is decent, and Kirkus away to Arsenal can do something, but I don't think it's the end of the world if he does return, because I think most people would expect the opposite, and for Arsenal to score, despite them possibly rotating and focusing fully on that PSG second leg in the Champions League. I've got nothing left in the bank with my current value, and you can make a few modifications like Visser to Cunha, for example, and all the other players I've discussed recently in every single position, but it also depends on your budget, and you could easily downgrade Raya to a cheaper goalkeeper. I think that's the easiest cash cow to make this squad very affordable and easy to attain. So don't worry too much about budget. I think it's very easy to build the main foundations of this wildcard team. And before I move on to Gameweek 36, I think with the captaincy, it is very open this week. I discussed this in my team selection video. Mbeumo is my current preference, and you'll see my top 10 list in the deadline stream tomorrow. I've also got Marmoush as the vice captain, but if you've got Isak, he is definitely a front runner. I think Mohamed Salah is always up there as well, and I wouldn't mind a punt on someone like De Bruyne. Ollie Watkins up front has actually been recommended in my transfers video as a great 1 week punt there against Aston Villa. And you've also got other options here like Bowen and Chris Wood. They're all viable, but my favourites would be Mbeumo, Marmoush, and I think Isak this week, but I'll talk about that more so in the deadline stream tomorrow. And for Gameweek 36, we'd also have a solid platform of Sells and Milenkovic facing Leicester at home, Gvardiol, De Bruyne and Marmoush facing Southampton away, but there could be rotation, so be very careful about going all in on Manchester City. Trippier would face Chelsea at home. Mbeumo and Visser away to Ipswich Town looks very solid. Bowen away to Man United. Salah at home to Arsenal, and Chris Wood also facing Leicester at home. And the bench has Raya away to Liverpool, Rodgers facing Bournemouth away, Kirkus facing Aston Villa at home, and Jake O'Brien facing Fulham away. Then for Gameweek 37, we would have Sells away to West Ham, Milenkovic and Chris Wood facing West Ham as well, obviously. Gvardiol, De Bruyne and Marmoush facing Bournemouth at home. Jake O'Brien facing Southampton, also at home. Mbeumo and Visser facing Fulham, another home fixture there. And Rodgers facing Tottenham. Salah away to Brighton. So that's a very solid platform and foundation for Gameweek 37. It certainly looks much better than what I have with my current non-wildcard team. Rice facing Newcastle at home. He's on the bench. The same goes for Bowen facing Nottingham Forest. Trippier away to Arsenal, and Kirkus facing Man City away. But then for Gameweek 38, to wrap things up, you've got Raya away to Southampton, and you do have multiple free transfers to use for every single Gameweek to deal with injuries, suspensions, and also to maybe change certain form players or just go a bit different in certain avenues. You might want to go for Saka and triple up on Arsenal against Southampton for the final Gameweek of the season. You've got Gvardiol, De Bruyne and Marmoush facing Fulham away, Trippier at home to Everton, Kirkus facing Leicester at home. You've also got Mbeumo and Visser away to Wolves, Bowen away to Ipswich Town, Salah facing Crystal Palace at home, and you've also got Chris Wood facing Chelsea at home, and a decent bench overall. But here you could easily make a few modifications and go to Saka again for Kevin De Bruyne, or other punts like Trossard, who has been in form recently for the Gunners in the Premier League at least. So there are different things you can do. Obviously, I'm 1.1 million over budget, and that's where you can also change other things with your future transfers, or just go for a cheaper goalkeeper than David Raya from the get-go. I'd still recommend Sells over him in the grand scheme of things. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. If you have the wildcard now, what are you looking to go to? Is it too much money to go for Raya and Sells simultaneously? I would probably imagine a lot of you would think so. And like I said, that's mainly just for those with a lot of money in the bank. So you can go for Raya to target that great fixture against Southampton away for the final Gameweek of this season. But Sells could still do a competent job against Chelsea at home and I've discussed all the players you need to really consider in every single position. Of course, 8 Nuri at the back is still decent, but I'm less keen on him now with Wolves not doubling and no team will double or blank for the rest of the season. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it insightful, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single upload or live stream, both FPL and UCL Fantasy. Follow me on X, Instagram, Blue Sky, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description for my Patreon and the championships for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, FPL League, and Spotify can also be found in the description. I'll see you tomorrow for yet another deadline stream, and keep your eyes peeled for more UCL Fantasy content, which includes the best team, my own team selection, and another deadline stream on Tuesday.